This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast with Bruce Hutchin, episode number 038. This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast with Bruce Hutchin, episode number 039.
Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, where it is all about whitetail deer hunting tips, techniques, and the stories so you can become a more successful whitetail deer hunter. And now your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Let's head to West Virginia today and connect with Steve Flores. Steve is a passionate hunter and enjoys chasing mountain whitetails in his native southern West Virginia. Steve credits his love for hunting to his dad, who took the time to introduce him to become what he is today, a lifelong whitetail hunter. Steve shares his knowledge of mountain whitetail bow hunting through a number of pages of major outdoor magazines, such as Bow and Arrow Hunting, Bow Hunting World, and Deer Hunting. He also writes articles for John Livingston's DeerLab. His insightful and helpful tips can also be found at various websites throughout the internet. In addition, he serves as a pro staff for Matthews and uses Under Armour gear exclusively for all his hunts. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and we're heading down to West Virginia, and we're going to talk to Steve Flores. Steve Flores, a pro staff member for Matthews, but more important than that, he's not more important, folks, but this guy writes a lot of great articles. He writes some content for John Livingston down there at DeerLab, and give a shout out to John this morning. And he writes, Steve writes for Bow and Arrow Hunting, Bow Hunting World, Deer Hunting, Dan Smith up in Iola, Wisconsin. So this guy knows his way around the woods, and he knows his way around the pen. So Steve Flores, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. So let's just jump right into the show and talk about why you love hunting whitetails.
I guess for me, the biggest thing is just the chess match that's involved in it. That's one of the main things. It's hunting a mature whitetail is to me probably one of the hardest things to do. And then when you replace you put a bow in your hand, it makes it even harder. And then for me, someone who hunts in the mountains, that just increases the challenge even more. So I've always been drawn to that challenge of matching wits with what I think is probably one of the smartest animals God ever created. So it's I always like to test myself against the animals, to see how I match up. I don't always win, but sometimes I do.
Yeah, we win enough to keep us coming back, don't we?
Yeah, just enough to keep you coming back for a little bit more.
Let's talk about the terrain in West Virginia. I know we got readers all over North America and or listeners all over North America. So share with us, where you hunt, what it looks like, and how difficult it really is to match wits with a mature whitetail buck.
Well, the terrain is nothing but mountains. There's no food plots. There's no CRT fields. It's basically just wooded mountains. The challenge for me is the biggest challenge is, unlike hunting in the Midwest, there's no established feeding locations and bedding locations. Deer can feed and bed in multiple locations in different days, different times of the year. So actually pinpointing an area where a deer is going to feed in the evenings is almost impossible. Because, you can't predict which acorn tree that this buck is going to go to when he gets up out of his bed. And on top of that, you can't really predict which thicket this buck is going to bed in before he gets up to go to one of 50 acorn trees that are dropping acorns. It's impossible to figure out. So that's the biggest challenge is putting yourself in a position where you can find those deer that are going from point A to point B when you really don't know where point A or point B is.
But in order to intercept that buck or get into his core area, let's just say that way, how do you do that?
Well, for me, I normally try to concentrate on funnels or pinch points, and what that is for me is characteristics within the terrain that will actually force a deer past my stand. It may be areas where really steep terrain and gradually sloping terrain meet. Obviously, the deer is going to choose the easy walk over the tough walk. They're lazy mostly. They're mostly a lazy creature. So for me, it's just finding those areas where that terrain is actually going to force that deer to walk past my tree stand. That, and I like to concentrate on those. I mean, food sources will change throughout the year, but the one constant is does, and those bucks will seek out the does no matter what. Nothing really changes that. So I like to find concentrations of does, and then hang stands near, pinch points and funnels, and then just wait until the rut is really in full swing. And then I like to move in and try to catch a buck that's cruising through.
Now, on your Facebook page, Steve Flores, you're looking at a rub. Now, bucks do leave sign leading up to and during a rut. What happens in September? Do you hunt in the early season or not?
Oh yeah, sure. I hunt in the early season, but one of the mistakes I made early on in my career was where whatever spot I was hunting in September was the same spot I was hunting in November.
Oops.
And, yeah. And sometimes it's the simplest things that seem to elude us. But yeah, I would find these really good spots. I would start September and I would hunt them every chance I got. And I kept thinking, well, when the rut gets here, it's really going to pick up and I want to get my buck and everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows, but it never worked out that way because I was basically just burning out my stand sites before November even got here. So now I have areas set aside for the early season and areas that I set aside that I only hunt during the rut.
And listeners, take note of what Steve just shared, because all of us have our favorite stands. All of us can go to a stand, see bucks, and especially when I say immature bucks, 1.5, 2.5-year-old, even 3.5-year-old, and then you're seeing does, and things are wonderful. Then all of a sudden things change. And they change because of the food. They change because of the changes in cover. They change because they know you're in their living room. And they're not going to tolerate that, especially mature bucks. They won't. Do you agree with that, Steve?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Most of the bucks, since I've changed the way I hunt and set aside those separate stands now for the rut, most of the bucks that I've shot were on the first day that I hunted my stand. I usually try to schedule my vacation to take a week off in that prime time when the bucks are really moving. And usually I only use about a day or two of that because the first time in, I usually end up putting an arrow through a buck. Which, the hardest part with that, it just takes a lot of discipline to stay out of those areas because, you know how it is. You just get so excited you want to hunt. You want to be in that stand. But the key is just having patience and understanding that if you hold off, that you're going to be rewarded most likely. And the first couple of times I did it, it was tough. But now it's just habit. I know that it's not time to hunt those areas, and I don't go near them.
We're going to come back to that. Let's share with the listeners a couple of your aha moments, and that's basically you've shared one already, and about, burning out a stand and hanging with a stand throughout the whole season, but I'm sure you get a couple others. So can you share those with our listeners?
A few years ago, I think it's easy for a lot of guys, younger guys especially, that are coming into the sport of hunting, whether it be with a gun or a rifle. With a bow or a rifle, to get caught up in the trophy mentality. And there's certainly nothing wrong with chasing mature bucks and going after, those older type deer. I do it myself, but, early on, I decided to do that and chase just the biggest deer I could find. And for me, I spent a whole season doing that and actually passed up several really nice bucks that would have been great bucks for me, for the area that I lived in, but I kind of used a different yardstick. I kind of used, a Midwest, what's big in West Virginia is not really big in say, Illinois, for example. So it's tough for a guy like me to try to keep up with those bucks that are shot in Illinois when I live in West Virginia. So I did that for a year. At the end of the season, I was really, really disgusted. Didn't really have any fun. And one of my buddies looked at me and said, "If you're not having fun, what's the point?" And that kind of stuck with me. I thought, that's so true, because it's supposed to be fun, regardless. If I'm not having fun going out in the woods and hunting, why am I doing it? So I kind of went back to why I like to be in the woods, and it's just to get out, be in nature, talk to God, see deer, shoot deer. There was a lot of different reasons that had nothing to do with the size of the animal I was trying to kill. So after that day, I kind of went back to why I like to hunt, and I've always kept that in the front. Now, I chase mature bucks now, but if I don't shoot one, my season, I don't base my success or failure on whether or not I'll shoot a mature buck.
A couple of weeks ago, Brenda Valentine was on the show, and one of her things she wanted to get out in the show was it's your hunt. Mm-hmm. And so many times, and I'm guilty, and I bet every single one of our listeners, we let other pressures, whether, your best buddy dumped a really nice buck and you go cranked up, well, I'm going to get a bigger one. Or, or you get in a situation and you go, I'm going to push myself just like I do at work. You're a writer, so you get deadlines, and so you got to make things happen. And whitetail hunting is more than that. It's about family, tradition, and friends. And it was a hard lesson for me to learn. But the way Brenda said it, and you can listen to her podcast, listeners, but take that to heart, because it's got to be fun. If it's not fun, and I'm not talking about the professionals out there doing TV shows and have to produce something, that's a completely different ball game. But most of us are never going to have a TV show. So, make it fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see a lot of guys these days, especially on social media and Facebook, they'll have a picture, success picture of them and their buck, and it's like the first thing that they say is, well, he's not the biggest buck, but, I know he's not well, okay, if who are we trying to please? Are we trying to please an audience, or are we doing it for ourselves? And I kind of fell into that trap, but, I do my best not to do that anymore. My kids are getting older now, and they're starting to experience the outdoors with me also. So that's kind of, that's where I'm going to find a lot of my enjoyment, is them, watching them grow up in the outdoors.
Let's talk about the class of deer that you're chasing in West Virginia. And Are they, Pope and Young type deer? Do they weigh 150 pounds? Just tell us about the animal, a mature buck in your neighborhood.
Mature buck, average mature buck, from my area. I would say the average on the bow-only county that I hunt is probably in the 140s, low 150s. That's average. My largest was pushing 170. And probably my lowest is, I've shot some really small deer too. The body weight is not comparable to Midwestern deer. But I would say on average you're looking at 140s. There's a lot of 130s that are taken young. And like I said, that goes back to, a lot of guys wouldn't shoot a 130, 140 class buck in the Midwest. For good reason. There's a lot of big bucks in the Midwest. But for me, where I live, that's a really nice deer.
And age class 3.5 to 4.5 or 140?
4.5, 5.5. I try to go after at least 4.5 and up.
Now, let's switch it up a little bit. You write for a number of magazines. What do you like about deer and deer hunting? Dan Smith over there is a senior editor. Why do you like writing for them, other than they might pay you a couple of bucks?
Deer and deer hunting, they seem to have, they just seem to have this information that you can't really get anywhere else. They always have and take a scientific point of view with them, and there's really a lot of stuff that I can get a lot of information from that magazine that I normally wouldn't get anywhere else. Like I said, from a scientific standpoint, they also have the tips and tactics stuff, but they seem to have a lot of science-based information that I like.
Yeah, I like deer and deer hunting, one, because they began with the stump sitters back in, I believe it is 1979. That's how long that magazine's been going. And sometime if you ever meet Dan, talk about how he reached his goal. I won't say anything more about that, but it's a great story. Really great story. So you're writing for a lot of articles. Where do you go out to get the information? You just shared with me you like deer and deer hunting. Are there any websites? Are there any specific books you've read that have helped you become a better hunter?
Better hunter. For me, the problem I ran into when I was younger, like I said, Midwestern hunting whitetail and hunting whitetail on the mountain is completely different. So when I was younger, I read everything I could get my hands on that dealt with whitetail deer. And I always tried to apply it to where I hunted, and it never seemed to work. One of the writers that I really enjoyed reading was Bill Winke. There was a lot of information that I learned from him and just from his writing that once I kind of adapted it to the mountains, I could use it. But I have to say he was a big influence. Cameron Haynes' book, Backcountry, I think that I know it is, Backcountry Bow Hunting. It was a big influence for me. And it was, even though he had a lot of his stuff was for Midwest, or actually the Western big game hunting, there was a lot of his philosophies and work ethics and stuff that I could pull from that book and apply it to whitetail hunting in the mountains. Even though he's chasing elk in the mountains, I'm chasing deer. You still have to, there's still that that work ethic that you have to apply and able to be successful, and training that comes with it. I would have to say this backcountry bow hunting book was a big influence for me.
Yeah, and I just popped it up. Cameron Haynes, experienced DIY backcountry bow hunting.
Yeah.
And, Cameron Haynes, I think, took our sport that we love and brought it to the understanding that, people like yourself, Steve, and back in my younger days, we were athletes.
Yeah.
We really were. And, the fitter I was, and I live out in Colorado, and I've been fortunate to hunt North America. And if I was in shape, then I could just keep going. My mental process stayed where it needed to be to finish the deal and to hang in there when, as you know, times get tough.
Yeah.
Give me some feedback on that statement.
Well, where I hunt in West Virginia, if you have let's say you have 100 hunters are going to go out. Well, most of them are going to pick the easiest spot that they can find to get to hunt. I mean, it's just human nature, Most of them will seek out an easy to get to location where they can, either ride an ATV to get to, or, somewhere that's going to require a lot less energy. And the deer know that, I think. I think the mature bucks know that. They understand it, so they actually avoid those areas. So in order to find the really mature bucks, you're going to have to go where nobody else is willing to go, which usually means the thickest, nastiest, steepest places you can find. And for me, you can't access areas like that if you sit on the couch, 10 months out of the year, and then decide when deer season starts that you're going to be a mountain man and go after deer. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, I mean, someone like Cameron Haynes, he's really brought the fitness aspect to the forefront of hunting. For guys that live in the Midwest and hunt over food plots, it may not apply to them, but for a lot of us guys on the East that hunt mountain bucks, and then especially guys in the West that are elk hunting and those mountains, it definitely applies to us.
One thing that you just said, the Midwest. Now, if you go for an all-day sit, and a lot of guys and gals will do that, especially during the rut, because you want to be out there. That takes a lot of mental concentration. And if you're, in my opinion, if you're not in good physical condition and you got to stay away from hanging out in the bars till closing time and then getting up at 4 and 5 and trying to sit a stand all day. You can't do it. I mean, you might be able to, but I hope you get your safety harness on because you're going to go to sleep. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just tough. So listeners, take to heed about taking care of your body, and because if you do that, you're going to have the mental awareness to hang in there and get your job done. Let's share just one or two lessons learned, and we're coming up in a couple of minutes. I want you to start thinking about it, Steve, about giving shout-outs to your sponsors and people. We've already mentioned DeerLab. You mentioned Cameron Hayes that have impacted your world, plus some of the companies. But share with us a couple of lessons learned that the listeners should take some notes on.
Lessons learned, just make it fun. I mean, whatever it is you do, make sure you're having fun. Don't get caught up in what everybody else is doing or what the industry's doing. Just try to have fun. That's it for me. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of different things that can suck the fun out of one of the most enjoyable sports that I've ever experienced. Just try not to let that happen.
Let's talk about your gear. Your bow, your arrows, your rest, release if you use one. Let's talk about that just for a couple of minutes.
Okay. Right now I'm shooting a Matthews no-cam. I've got a HHA Kingpin tournament edition sight on it. It's a single pin sight. So I'm really in love with that sight. I've only been using it for a couple of weeks, but it's really, really nice sight. I've got an NAP drop away Apache drop away rest. It's not an expensive rest, but it probably shoots better than any drop away rest I've ever had on any of my bows, and it's virtually half the price of most drop aways that are on the market. Arrows, I'm shooting Carbon Express, and I tip those with an NAP Thunderhead, 6-blade broadhead.
How about scent control?
Scent control, I use Under Armour. Almost everything I wear is Under Armour. But, scent control, a lot of guys think, well, I've got this suit on, the deer can't smell me. That's not really how it works. Scent control for me starts a month before the season even opens, and I start using unscented soaps. I stop using shaving cream. I don't use any type of cologne. So there's a lot of steps that goes into scent control that has nothing to do with what type of clothing you wear.
Thanks for that. And let's just wrap up the show now. I mean, you've given us some great information, and I can't wait to have you back on the show again, because I get almost a page of notes. That's pretty good, Steve. I appreciate that. So let's give a shout out to how people can get in touch with you, some of the companies you write for, some of the guys and gals that have impacted you. I know you shared some already, but just wrap up the show with that information, please.
Okay. If anybody wants to check out what I'm up to, they can look me up on Instagram. My handle is Mountain Bow Hunter. I'm also on Facebook. I write for 365 Whitetail. I blog for DeerLab. I blog for bowhunting.com. I also have a small website that I started. Sometimes I'll throw some information up on it, mountainwhitetails.com. Those are pretty much the main resources to get a hold of me, or just to see what I'm into.
Anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that have helped me along the way. Especially Matthews and Under Armour. Going back to the fitness aspect of how I hunt, Wilderness Athlete is a big sponsor for me. I've actually started to incorporate supplementation into my hunts, because dragging a deer or actually just getting to a deer in these mountains is a workout in itself. So I've actually adopted the philosophy of, well, why not use supplementation to help me get to those areas? So, with that, Wilderness Athlete has been a big supporter of me. So I'll give a shout out to those guys.
Steve Flores, thank you so much for being part of the show and joining the Whitetail Rendezvous Nation, and I look forward to having you on the show again.
Thank you, Bruce. I really appreciate the opportunity to just to ramble on about it with you for a little while and share my thoughts. I really appreciate it.
So, folks, keep the sun at your back, the wind in your face, and always be patient. And let's throw out one for Steve that I'm gonna tag on for everybody and make it fun.
As your host at Whitetail Rendezvous, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time with us today. I look forward to sharing with you in the next episode more whitetail hunting tips, techniques, and stories. Until then, keep the sun at your back, the wind in your face, and always be patient.
If you have any tips, comments, or suggestions, or what we can do to improve, because we're here to serve you, let us know. Thanks for listening to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast at www.whitetailrendezvous.com.